morning, Sam. How are you doing today?
Good, Arrow, sir. How are you?
Absolutely fantastic. The 29th Annual Critics' Choice Awards. To me, this is part of the playoffs on our way to the Super Bowl. And, man, this is a good time to be watching these things.
Absolutely. And I think that's the point of the whole thing. The Oscars were originally designed, essentially, to promote moviegoing in Hollywood. And now these subsequent road to Oscar award shows, Critics' Choice Awards being the most important step, frankly, on the road to Oscars. And I think in addition to acknowledging the big hits like Barbie and Oppenheimer, what happens here, I think, is saying, hey, look, here's a television show you may not be familiar with, or here's a movie title, American Fiction as an example, you may not really know, and you should think about it too. So it's good to give accolades to the good stuff that people already know about, and it's especially good to bring up other things that people may not necessarily be that well aware of.
I'm seeing fewer movie critics at these premieres, and I'm seeing more influencers. Will that somehow make its way into like a Critics' Choice Awards?
That's a really good question. That's an excellent, excellent question. I think you're seeing more influencers because they're working in conjunction with the studios and the streamers to quote unquote spread the word.
Yep.
But they don't perform the function that the members of our group do. Our group are professional critics, the Critics' Choice Association. So you have to have work published, you have to be on air or online. So not just anybody can get in. There's a real membership criteria. And these are people who do this professionally for a living, which is a distinction from an influencer who may be, a handsome lad or a gorgeous gal who shows up at a premiere and says to their followers, oh my gosh, I'm here, and Robert Downey Jr. has a beautiful cologne, or something like that. I think we have a slightly higher-minded function.
I'm glad you put it that way because it's the same way with podcasters, because anybody can podcast, but they're not broadcasters. We've gone through the rigmarole. We've been through the blood and the guts and everything, and I'm so glad that you put it that way because now I have a platform I can stand on and say, no, I'm still a broadcaster.
No, I tell you what, I have a colleague. I've been on television in Los Angeles since the beginning of time. And one of my colleagues, Mark Krisky, who's been our weatherman with us the whole time, says it so well that just because everybody can doesn't mean that everybody should.
Yeah.
I think you see kind of a diminishment of qualitative diminishment when everybody's doing it, not necessarily everybody's good at it.
We got to talk about Paul Giamatti. My God, this guy, everything he touches, he just turns it into gold.
There is a particular ability, and maybe this is an adjective that is overused, but I think it's applicable. There's a depth to Paul Giamatti. There are these layers to Paul Giamatti. And there's a description of a scene in The Holdovers where Paul Giamatti is silent. He doesn't speak, but he's thinking about 4 or 5 different things. and you can almost see that thought process. And I've admired him for so long. And backstage at the Golden Globes, he talked about the man he owes his career to, interestingly enough, is Howard Stern, playing that radio program director Pig Vomit in the Howard Stern movie. Paul Giamatti had done other roles before in a lot of kids' movies. My kids know him from Big Fat Liar and several other movies of that ilk. But he said it was the role in the Stern movie that really got people to pay attention. And then, of course, I've been a huge Billions fan. Paul, a fan of the cast as well. His social life kind of interesting now. He is dating an actress named Clara Wong who played, quote unquote, the mistress on Billions.
Oh,
and
wow.
She was with him at the Golden Globes. We'll see who he brings to the Critics' Choice Award.
Would you say that the greatest pregnant pause in the history of movies is Oppenheimer? Because of that, I mean, we see the explosion, and then here comes the pause.
Yeah, I mean, here's something that doesn't happen very often, and I'm going to equate A to Z. Better Call Saul, which, I enjoyed very, very much as a TV series. And I should also point out the Critics' Choice Awards salute the best in movies and in television. And Better Call Saul, that opening sequence of the very first episode where he's the clandestine manager of the Cinnabon, and it might be a 10, 12-minute sequence of just the making of Cinnabon. And I watched it, and because I'm like, wow, they're really taking their time. And so what Christopher Nolan does very successfully in what is a long movie, Oppenheimer, is takes his time. And there are these pauses. But what's that old cliche, the pause that refreshes? Yeah. I noticed it, as you did. It didn't bother me. It maybe showed an assurance that he's like, this story is so compelling. The audience will take in this pause. It doesn't have to be so rat-a-tat-tat where there's something happening every 15 seconds.
So is it in our imagination that that there's a big war between what we're watching with our binge watching versus what's on the big screen? Because, I mean, I love The Bear. I love how it's a series, and I couldn't watch it if it was a 2-hour movie.
I love The Bear, too. And the phrase that I use, The Bear, by the way, a big nominee on our television category, and, of course, several of the stars of The Bear receiving individual nominations. I always say, best show, worst title.
Yeah.
Because while The Bear obviously is the name of the restaurant, I think people didn't know, I didn't know what that title meant or how it related. I think that show is absolutely remarkable. And probably not since The Sopranos has there been such a water cooler show where people are like, hey, have you seen that? Or you've got to check this out. And, it's funny how we come to know people that we didn't know. I guess Jeremy Allen White was in Shameless for years. I never really watched that show, and I don't remember him on it. But boy, this show is beautifully cast. And I tell you what, as an entertainment reporter and as a fan, I'm excited to see these people at our Critics' Choice Awards and our Critics' Choice Red Carpet.
I'll tell you, that had to have been Jamie Lee Curtis's best acting I've ever seen her do, especially when it comes to a dramatic role like that.
Oh, my gosh. That particular episode, one thing about The Bear, it sort of, to me, leaves you wanting more, although there's an intensity to it. And there's so many different notes to it. That wonderful episode where the sous chef went to Europe and sort of studied, that was amazing. But that Christmas dinner episode with that intensity, unbelievable. And, here's Jamie Lee Curtis, last year, the darling of award season, talking about how, 2 years before that, she was known for doing yogurt commercials.
Yeah.
So one thing, I think it's analogous to sports, how careers can vary and careers can go up and down. I think it makes it interesting to observe show business, especially now.
Am I the only one that had a problem watching Maestro with Bradley Cooper?
Did you have a problem watching Maestro? Because I think it's very well made.
Yep.
And this is not a question implying any degree of homophobia. But, here's a married artist who's a cad, but he's a cad with other men, not with women, which would be the traditional expectation. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of people, that was off-putting for whatever reason. Yeah. I think it's very well made. I think that climactic conducting scene in the British church is unbelievable. I mean, look at Bradley Cooper, 2 for 2 in the most extraordinary way. But I don't think it has been overall received by the public as strongly as it's been received by the critical community. He is a nominee for Best Director, for Best Actor. He's a very talented guy.
It's one of those movies where I think I made my big mistake by not seeing it in the theater. I saw it on the flat screen, and I think that it's bigger than the flat screen.
You're exactly right. It merits being. I saw it in a theater, and it merits being seen in a theater.
Yeah. How about Color Purple? I mean, this is starting to happen where every one of these movies from the past are all becoming musicals, just like Mean Girls. It's like, oh my God, didn't even know it was a musical.
Color Purple, we just had Danielle Brooks on our television program in Los Angeles yesterday. And one thing that happens as you get to meet these people and really talk to them, she couldn't be more impressive. Wow. And in fact, we're having Taraji P. Henson on. These are people, by the way, who'll be, walking the red carpet of the Critics' Choice Awards, who are nominees who will be attending. And Coleman Domingo, there's nobody I like or admire more. I thought it was a real calculated risk because people, know and love that title. Mm-hmm. And they're not really promoting it as a musical, but I think that the musical numbers are pretty stirring.
Sam, you're the best. I cannot wait to talk with you in the future many, many, many more times because you are speaking what I live, and that is movies and television.